Hi, how you doing? Welcome to the final series discussion of this year. Oh, it's so fun. I've read so many different series this past year and I've loved discussing every single one of them with you this past year. But we got one more in the books. Uh, it's a special one. Because today I'm talking about the Bevelstokes trilogy by Julia Quinn. This is a trilogy of standalone historical romances. They are companion novels, like side characters from this book are the main characters in this book, and the side characters from this book are the main characters in this one. You know how that works. So it's a fun historical romance series, and I just finished it, so I thought I would give you a video in which I talk about all my thoughts on them. This will be entirely spoiler free, just in case you've never seen one of my series discussions. They're always spoiler free, so if you've not read any of these books, don't worry, you're safe. And yeah, let's just get started. I don't really have a series synopsis for you because they are kind of like standalone romances. So we're just diving into the ranking. And when I give you this ranking, you'll know it is going to be an interesting video because my least favorite of this series is the first book, The Secret Diaries of Miss Miranda Shiver. Then on the second place, we have What Happens in London, which is book 2. And then my favorite is the last book in this series, 10 Things I Love About You. So as you can tell, we didn't start as well, but we finished on top. But let me just give you some individual reviews for these books so you know why they're ranked the way that they are. I'll also be giving you a synopsis for each book because they are standalone romances, so it feels like that's the best way to go, you know? The first book in the series is The Secret Diaries of Miss Miranda Shiver. In this book, we follow Miranda Shiver, who isn't the prettiest woman in town, and she's always known this. Like, nobody has ever felt the need to hide it from her, even when she was a child. And that's actually when this book starts, when she's 10 years old and she is at her best friend's party, and like people are kind of making fun of her looks, and the only person to kind of stand up for her is her best friend's brother, who ends up giving her a compliment. He's like a couple of years older than them. He compliments her, and ever since she has been in love. And then we flash forward to the actual start of the novel, which is years later, and Miranda is making her debut. I don't think she's been out for very long, and that brother, whose name is Turner, got married, and his wife has now died at the start of the novel, and like they never really got along, so he's not like that sad about his wife dying. But it does mean that there is a chance for Miranda and Turner to fall in love. And yeah, I hated this book so much. I give 1 of 5 stars to this book because I just could not put up with it. The only reason I didn't DNF is because I knew I wanted to read the rest of the series, and even though because it is standalone companion romances, it isn't like the most necessary to have read this book to completion, but I still felt like I needed to give it a fair shot because of that. Miranda, our titular character, wasn't the worst. I do think she was a decently likable enough character, but I do think most of her personality was her love for Turner, which was completely based on this one compliment he gave her when she was 10, and like there was no real further development towards it, which got really annoying to read. And then Turner, he's a piece of shit, so that made it even more annoying that no matter what, this one compliment he gave her when she was 10 is the only reason why she holds on to her feelings so heavily. Well, he's just generally a shitty person and stringing Miranda along the entire book. Like, I still, by the end of this book, was not convinced that this man actually had feelings for her. He just liked being admired and knew he was getting that from Miranda and toyed with her feelings so many times. And it was so annoying to read. You can understand why I hated this book, because if you can vibe with the romance in a romance novel, you know, that's never a good sign. But I did really like the side characters in this book, especially the rest of the Bevelstokes. I thought they were all really fun, and that still kept me excited to continue on with the series despite absolutely hating this first book. And the next book is What Happens in London. And in this book, we follow Olivia, who is actually Miranda's best friend and Turner's younger sister from the first book. And she has heard at a party that her new neighbor has potentially killed his fiance. And now she doesn't believe it because she does think the rumors are a little bit ridiculous. But just to be sure that she's not living next door to a serial killer, she decides to kind of spy on him, especially because her bedroom's window like faces his office window, so like she can glimpse inside. But she very quickly like discovers that all he does is read and write, and there's nothing that interesting about him. and she thinks that he also hasn't noticed her. But Harry, who is the neighbor, actually is a translator for the War Office and has definitely noticed Olivia spying on him. And at first, he kind of like takes suspicion to that, but he kind of very quickly would set off as just like a curious young woman, I guess. Until he gets notified by the War Office that the Russian prince is in town, and he is kind of set to keep an eye on him because he is a little bit sus. The Prussian prince has an interest in Olivia, and therefore Harry kind of resumes his thoughts on Olivia's spying and thinks that maybe there might be a little bit more sinister things going on. And of course, in this whole keeping an eye on each other thing, they end up falling in love because it's a romance. What else did you expect? And yeah, in the end, I ended up giving this book 3 out of 5 stars. I did quite enjoy my time reading this, but overall, I feel like I never really got that attached to anything happening. I never felt that invested in what was happening in the novel, and therefore I just never really got to develop strong feelings towards anything that was happening in the book, and I kind of landed on a 3-star middle of the road, like fine feeling. The romance was very underdeveloped in my opinion. I mean, they were a cute match and I definitely get it. They had some fun banter throughout the book, but overall I feel like they went from 0 to 100 like very quickly, and there's a lot of times in the book where we are told that they hang out like a bunch, but like we aren't shown that, and that kind of makes that relationship development feel even less than what we got, you know? The like political intrigue B plot in this book, I don't know what else to call it. It's not really political intrigue, but like, you know, it's related. That B plot was very interesting, and it's very unlike any other Julia Quinn I've read before, and I've read quite a few, and it made it stand out from the bunch of that. I thought it was interesting, it was fun. But like I said, I don't really have that many strong opinions about this book, and therefore I also just like don't have a lot to tell you about it. And then lastly, we have my favorite in this series, which is 10 Things I Love About You, which is also technically the only one that doesn't deserve the Bevelstokes title because this isn't about a Bevelstoke family member. And this story follows Sebastian, who is Harry's best friend and cousin, and his uncle is an earl, and he is kind of set to inherit the title if the uncle doesn't remarry and produce an heir. And at the start of this novel, we find out that his uncle has this eye out on Annabelle, who is our protagonist, our female protagonist. She's kind of a more poor, kind of like country woman, and for her, the match with the earl would be very beneficial, but like she's kind of not that excited about it because the earl is much older than her, and he kind of the only thing he cares about is producing an heir, and that makes her feel icky. So she's like not fully in love with the idea, but she also kind of like feels like she has to marry him because it would be monetarily very valuable to her, this marriage. Towards the start of this novel, at a ball kind of outside, Sebastian and Annabelle kind of run into each other, at first not really knowing who the other is, and they immediately, sparks fly immediately between them, and they develop a friendship and potential feelings before they even realize who the other person is. I give this 4 out of 5 stars. I really love this. Sebastian is such a great main character. We already had appearances from him in the second book, and he was lovely in that as well, and I loved following him in this book as well. He's just so funny, and Annabelle is the same. They are perfectly made for each other. They aren't like the exact same. They have differences, but like they fill each other out really well, and I loved their connection and just their banter and their interactions throughout the novel. They were just adorable. They had me smiling and kicking my feet because it was such a great match and so well developed in this book. I also really love both of their personal journeys because Annabelle, of course, is struggling with kind of doing what she wants and doing what she needs to do, I guess. And then Sebastian is a writer. He writes a bunch of silly romance adventure books that are really popular, but like he doesn't want anyone to know because they are kind of ridiculous, these books, so he feels kind of awkward like telling people about it, and I really like that aspect as well. I feel like that kind of books that are being written in historical fiction are often written by a female protagonist. It's kind of fun to have that done by a male protagonist, and I feel like that adds like a different kind of angle to the story that I really liked. Like I said before, Sebastian is a very funny person, and Annabelle matches his humor very well, so this was a very funny book. I laughed out loud numerous times. The only reason why this ended up not being a 5-star for me is because I do feel like the ending gets a bit much, which is gonna sound difficult to understand without spoiling anything, because I do think the ending is sort of a realistic approach to solving a conflict, I guess. But in the same sense, it's a lot. And I feel like we could have, I don't know, it felt just a bit much, and I feel like it could have been toned down a little bit. But yeah, that was everything for my individual thoughts. Some overall thoughts, there aren't many because there's so very different books to me, so there aren't many thoughts that I have for like the entire series. But still, one complaint I do have is that Olivia Twin doesn't have his own book. At first I was expecting that the third book, the three Bevelstokes siblings, which are Turner, Olivia, and then Olivia's twin, whose name I've forgotten, I'm so sorry, but because there were three books, I thought we were gonna follow all three siblings. But like I mentioned before, the third book isn't a Bevelstoke, which I don't mind because I love Sebastian. I'm glad he got his own romance, but I'm kind of sad that our third Bevelstoke sibling didn't get his own romance, because I did quite like his appearances, especially in book 1, and book 2 is a little less present. So it would have been great to see him get his happily ever after as well. Maybe we will someday, but that's just kind of something that didn't happen. And besides the first book, I do think that these were very cute romances. Like I said, the first book, I did not like the romance at all. It shouldn't have happened. Bad match. But the other two books were very great matches. I feel like their personalities matched really well. It's just that, again, with the second book, I feel like we got to see a little bit too little of them kind of developing their feelings, and I would have liked a little bit more of that. But for the rest, I do think they were cute romances with great couple of matches, and they were really likable and fun characters. Besides Turner, again, he's a piece of shit, but even Miranda Shiva, if you take away her undying love for a piece of shit, she's decent. And the other characters are all very fun. And yeah, they're very readable books, very quick reads. I flew through all three of these books in like a day because they were so quick to read. And yeah, that's kind of all I have for you today. Like I said, it's kind of difficult to give some overall thoughts on the series because I had such different experiences with each book, but I am glad I read the series. I'm glad I pushed through that first book, which I thought was really bad, to get through the other two because they were decent. That's kind of all I have for you. And let me know in the comments what you thought of these books. If you've read them, feel free to discuss in spoilery detail what you thought of them. I'd love to talk about things more spoilery. Just leave a bit of a spoiler warning at the top of your comments so people who are watching this video and who haven't read the books yet know not to read your comments. That's all I have to say, so I'll see you next time. Bye.